Good morning and welcome to Dewdrop. I'm Reverend Grace Reyes and I welcome you to this channel. I'm going to be reading from Luke 18, verse 8. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? This verse comes at the end of the parable of the persistent widow. Jesus told this story to teach his disciples that they should always pray and never give up. The widow had no influence, no power, and no status, yet she possessed something incredibly valuable: persistence. She kept coming, she kept asking, and she refused to quit. Jesus was not merely teaching about prayer, he was teaching about faith. Faith is what keeps us praying when we do not see a clear path forward. Faith is what keeps us standing when the storm has not passed. Faith is what keeps us believing when circumstances seem to contradict God's promises. Have you been praying? Have you been in your prayer closet and it seems like forever that prayer has not been answered? Keep praying. The widow's persistence revealed her faith. She believed that eventually justice would come. Had she stopped believing, she would have stopped asking. And as I reflected on this passage, I was struck by what Jesus did not ask. He did not ask, will I find successful people? He didn't ask whether he would find influencers or good speakers. He did not ask, will I find large ministries? He did not ask, will I find people with impressive resumes, beautiful homes, or financial security? His question was simple, but it was deep. It was profound, and it reflects the age that we live in today. He asked whether he would find faith. Faith that when you're sick, you would be healed. Faith when you see your child lost on the streets, bound by addiction, that he would be delivered. Faith that your child is suffering from mental illness and suicidal thoughts, that the Lord would not allow the enemy to snatch him from his hand. That tells us something about what matters most to God. When the Lord looks at our lives and he's not measuring us according to the world's standards, he is looking for hearts that trust him. He's looking for men and women who continue to believe his word when the culture rejects it. He's looking for believers who refuse to compromise the truth, even though the majority go down a different path. He's looking for people who keep their eyes fixed on him, regardless of what is happening around them. He's looking for people that are praying, that are worshiping, that are believing for the miracles that he freely gives and manifests if we just believe. In Hebrews 11:6, he says, but without faith, it's impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Notice that scripture does not say it is difficult to please God without faith. It says it is impossible. Why? Because faith acknowledges God's character. Faith declares that God is trustworthy. Faith says, Lord, I may not understand what you are doing, but I know you are good. Faith drove Abraham from his father's house, from the comfort that he had grown up in. Faith allowed Moses to obey God, although he stuttered, and to lead the people out of Egypt. Faith believed the burning bush. Faith believed when the Lord said to Moses, as they stood in front of a sea, and there was an army coming behind them. And faith believed when God said to him and asked him, what do you have in your hand, Moses? And he remembered that that same staff in his hand had performed miracles, had turned into a snake. And he said to Moses, stretch it out. And he obeyed. And the sea parted. And the people were rescued. That kind of faith honors God. Today we're living in a world filled with uncertainty. Every day we hear about wars and economic instability, moral confusion, natural disasters, and growing deception. Many people are fearful about the future, but Jesus told us that things would happen, that these things would occur. In Matthew 24, please read it. He describes conditions that would characterize the last days. Yet, throughout his teachings, his message to believers was not panic, not fear. His message was about persevering. The Lord never intended his people to be overcome by fear. He intended us to walk by faith. Fear focuses on circumstances. Faith focuses on Christ. Fear says, what if everything falls apart? Faith says, my God is still on the throne. Fear says, I don't know what tomorrow holds. Faith says, I know who holds my tomorrows. Perhaps today you find yourself facing a difficult season. Maybe you're waiting for a healing. Maybe you're praying for a prodigal son or daughter. Maybe you are struggling financially. Maybe you're grieving the loss of someone that you love. Maybe you're carrying a burden that nobody else knows about. If that's you, I want to encourage you today, don't give up. The same God who carried you yesterday will carry you tomorrow. The same God who opened the doors in the past will open the doors again. The same God who healed before still heals and performs miracles today. Remember that the same God who answered prayers years ago is still listening to your prayers now. One of the greatest attacks of the enemy is discouragement. The enemy knows that if he can convince believers to quit praying, quit trusting, or even quit hoping, he can weaken their faith. That is why Jesus began this parable by teaching that we should always pray and not lose heart. Not lose heart, not become weary, not become discouraged, not give up. Why? Because God is working where we cannot see. Many times heaven seems silent. Ask Daniel in Daniel chapter 10. It seems like God was silent, yet he was working. The angel fought with the prince of Persia, and it was delayed for 21 days. It did not mean that Daniel did not receive the answer, But he prayed, he persevered, he did not get up from his prayer place until he got the answer he was waiting for. Same thing with Joseph. For years, he sat in a prison cell. He was forgotten by people and seemingly forgotten by his circumstances. Yet God was preparing him for a throne. Think of it about Abraham. He waited decades for the promised son. Yet God's promise came exactly as he had spoken it. And sometimes we just have to wait on God's timing. We can think about David. He was anointed king, a young man, yet years passed before he wore the crown. God was preparing his character before fulfilling his calling. So perhaps the waiting season you are in today is not evidence that God has abandoned you. Perhaps it is evidence that God is preparing something greater than you can currently imagine. Faith trusts in God's timing. Faith trusts in God's wisdom. Faith trusts God's heart. Prayer is one of the greatest expressions of faith. Every time you pray, you are declaring that God hears. Every time you pray, you're declaring that God cares. Every time you pray, you are declaring that God is more than able. When you bow your head in prayer, you are exercising your faith. That is why the enemy fights prayer so fiercely. He wants believers distracted, scrolling on their phones, discouraged, and spiritually exhausted. But today I want to encourage you to return to the place of prayer, even if your prayer is simple, even if your words are few, even if all you can say is, Lord, help me. Just keep praying. Just keep believing. Keep trusting him. The Lord sees your faithfulness. So as we come closer to the return of Christ, there will be increasing pressure to believe and to compromise in other things. There will be pressure to water down the truth. There will be pressure to conform to this world. But Jesus is looking for faithful followers. He's looking for believers who remain steadfast, believers who stand on his word, his holiness, believers who continue to trust him regardless of what the world says. When Jesus returns, may he find us praying. May he find us worshiping. May he find us serving in his kingdom. May he find us loving others, proclaiming the gospel, and standing firm on our faith. And may he find us watching and waiting with joyful expectation. Come, Jesus, come. So whatever your challenges that you're facing today, remember this. Your faith may feel small, but God is great. Your strength may be limited, but his strength is unlimited. Your resources may be insufficient, but his supply, like with the widow and the oil, with Elijah, his supply never runs out. Your situation may seem impossible, but nothing, absolutely nothing, is impossible with God. So don't quit. Don't surrender to discouragement. Don't allow fear to have the final word. Lift your eyes Fix your gaze upon Jesus. Continue praying, trusting, and believing, because one day the skies are going to open up. The trumpet is going to sound, and the King of Kings will return. And when he comes, may he find faith in all of us. God bless you, and may your day be filled with his peace, his presence, and the unwavering confidence that he who promised is faithful. God bless you.